Good morning, everybody. Good morning, everybody. Lovely to see you here in the middle of August. Of course, Reform, we're always at work. Is about making welfare work. And I just want to reiterate at the start, we at Reform, we will always do the right thing to protect and support our pensioners, the elderly, the sick, the vulnerable, those looking for work. That is a key to who we are. And in a sense, we all want a world-leading benefit system that helps and supports those in need. But the reality is, I think most people accept, across all parties or no parties, that actually the current welfare system isn't working properly. And that is so different from being a world-leading system. And because it's not working properly, actually, it is not making welfare work. And many commentators have looked in great detail over this over the years, and some here wrote some time ago that, of course, too many people on benefits actually want to work, but they are now trapped in a system where they can't get off the benefits escalator. And what a disaster that is. What a waste that is for individuals, for their family, and also for their local community. So many people want to work, but they're currently trapped in a system that prevents it. And that surely means that it needs reform. And likewise, as part of the system, PIP, well-intentioned, just like the benefit system, well-intentioned, but again, at the moment, it's not working. That's the reality, and the cost is going through the roof. And what we're saying is, in order to absolutely guarantee that all of our existing British citizens who are currently on PIP, who need PIP, in order to protect them and support them so that we guarantee that they will remain on PIP as long as they need it, we have to reform the current system. We have to reform it for future claims, and we have to reform it for overseas nationals. I think most people, when you step back and you think, let's look at this, is it fair that overseas nationals come to the UK, don't work, and ultimately cost the British taxpayer a lot of money and put at risk that issue of whether we can protect and support our own? And I think most people would reasonably say, actually, that's not fair. And we Brits, we're very focused on fairness. So we have to make some significant changes and adjustments to the existing system in order to ensure that we can guarantee it and protect it for the future, and protect our pensioners, protect the triple lock, and those other things that are so important to support those in need of that help. That's why this is the right thing to do. That's why the detail that you're going to hear in a second from Robert Jenrick has been looked at over a long period of time. And is it easy? No, it's complicated. But is it fair and right to go the extra mile in order to ensure that we make it work, we make it a world-leading system, we continuously improve it? Absolutely. And I'd like to think that anybody of any party or no party would say, yeah, this is actually a journey that we should all get behind in order to help those genuinely in need. So without further ado, I'm going to invite Robert Jenrick to come and give the detail of this policy. Robert.
Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much indeed, Richard, for opening today's press conference. A just and moral society is judged by how it treats the powerful, but also by how it protects the vulnerable. Those are the words of John Stuart Mill, the 19th century MP and philosopher. And they're as true today as they were when he wrote them. That is the measure of a society and a country. It was a baton picked up by William Beveridge in his 1940s work, which laid the foundations for the modern welfare state as we know it today. But he understood that to ensure fairness in this new system, there would need to be a new social contract, which conferred both rights and responsibilities. He said a cooperation between the state and the individual. The state would give security for service and contribution, but it would not stifle incentive, opportunity, and responsibility. We would receive benefit in return for contribution, rather than always free allowances from the state. And for those of us who couldn't work because of physical disability or conditions which meant we had no choice, they would always be protected. The state, the community, would step in so that they could live their lives to the fullest possible extent. It's these principles, ladies and gentlemen, which guide Reform's approach to welfare today. Those in need, pensioners, children, the vulnerable, our armed forces veterans, will always be protected under a Reform government. It is part of who we are. It is part of what drove each and every one of us into politics. It's why our party's banner is family, community, country. But for those who break the social contract, who act, for whatever reason, out of selfishness, to take from the community when their family, their friends, their neighbors, their colleagues all really know that they don't need it, there will have to be a change of approach to restore fairness. It's accepted now, I believe, that the bond that William Beveridge spoke about has been broken. I've certainly heard it all over the country, in countless conversations on the doorsteps in my own constituency. I think everybody in this room has heard it in conversations that they've had themselves. Why has this happened? Partly because politicians in the Labour Party believed that they could buy votes by simply doling out more and more cash with fewer and fewer checks. Also, partly because the Tories, my former party, latterly were too afraid to uphold Beveridge's principles for fear of a backlash. As a result, by 2031, the annual tax burden to pay for welfare on every family in Britain will reach £7,000 a year. Some of that money, a lot of that money, is paying for those people who are in genuine need, on pensions for the elderly, on assistance for the seriously disabled, on providing modest support for carers. But too much of what we spend is not helping those who really need it. Furthermore, 1 in 6 universal credit claimants is not even a British or Irish citizen. 55 billion to foreigners in the last 4 years alone. Just imagine what that money could have done to make the lives of British people better, like lowering their taxes, investing in hospitals and schools, filling the potholes in the roads. The British taxpayer is acting as the welfare state for the world. That's unfair. We all know it. There are 6.6 million working-age people in the UK claiming out-of-work benefits. Among their number are many who can work, who should work, but have chosen not to. And the system's allowed that to persist. These people are really taking advantage of their fellow citizens, their friends, their neighbours, their community. And disability and incapacity claims have doubled in less than a decade, with more than 4 million people now claiming. Britain is not twice as sick as it was just a few years ago. We all know that. Even without looking particularly hard, we know that almost £9 billion was also lost to identified fraud and error last year alone because of the sheer incompetence by which the system has been managed. In towns and cities up and down the country, working people tell stories of those in their communities who are pulling a fast one, taking everyone for fools. The family who enjoy regular holidays, nights out, who have new Motability cars on the drive, but who, out of choice, haven't seen a day's work for years, sometimes decades. That is fundamentally unfair. What was a source of pride for British people, a marker that we all live in a civilized society, has become viewed by many people as a joke. And in the cold light of day, has to be seen, I believe, as both a moral and an economic catastrophe. A broken contract, which too often takes from those who choose to work and hands to those who choose not to. It's also fundamentally unsustainable. For every pound we spend on defence this year, we will spend 8 on welfare. £8 on welfare. We also live in a time of unprecedented change for working people. Everything we thought we knew is being turned upside down. Good jobs, outsourced overseas. Disastrous energy policies, deindustrializing huge parts of our country. And now, AI hollowing out the very middle class and graduate jobs that people thought would replace the industrial jobs that were lost in recent decades because of bad policies. Beveridge wrote in a time when Britain, ravaged by war, felt broken. Even in victory, it was exalted, but exhausted. Today, Britain feels broken again and faces huge challenges. It needs leadership. It needs reform. We need a welfare state that answers those challenges, but which is built on the principles that built the welfare state we enjoy today. So I'm setting out how a reform UK government will fix Britain's broken welfare schemes to restore fairness to the system, caring for those who are unable to support themselves, helping those who can towards independence, opportunity, and to take full advantage of life. And always keeping sight of that belief, contribution from those who can make it, for security for those who can't. It's a plan that will get 241,000 British people back into work, to save the taxpayer £51 billion a year, £1,700 for every family in our country. We'll begin by ending the foreign welfare rip-off. Under a reform government, only British citizens will be entitled to benefits. There will be limited exceptions: service in the armed forces, contributory state pensions for those who have paid their way. But beyond that, the line will be clear. The welfare state is there for Britain. No British citizenship, no entitlement. That's fair. If put in place today, this would save the taxpayer £21 billion a year by 2029, £700 per household, money that belongs to the British people, whether for public services or tax cuts. Fairness, too, lies in the heart of our proposed reforms to the disability system. We do not accept, and will not accept, that there's no alternative to watching the claimant count soar at a rate unmatched almost anywhere else on earth. We are consigning people who would otherwise be capable to a life on welfare, wasting their potential, heaping ever higher burdens upon those who do work. Under reform, this will end. But we'll make these reforms carefully, always protecting those who need help, in particular, the severely disabled. We'll introduce a new system of return-to-work cover based on a program in the Netherlands, which will cut disability claims by 40%. The idea is very simple. For the first 2 years of an employee being signed off sick, they'll remain on their employer's books. receiving payments based on welfare rates. Employers' national insurance contributions will be cut nationally to offset those costs, giving the employers who know their workers best an incentive, firstly, to look after them well when they are in work, and then to help them back into work if they're off sick, rather than just passing the bill to the taxpayer and forgetting about their workers. That's not the right way. And let's be clear, there should not be any additional financial burden on businesses. Reform has already set out a much more detailed plan than any other political party on how we will reduce the cost of employing people, like scrapping the increase in employers' national insurance for British workers. We'll always put working people first. We'll always make sure businesses can take on workers. Those unable to return to work will go through a single rigorous disability needs assessment, replacing today's many overlapping assessments. Cash support above standard universal credit rates will be reserved for severe cases. And those who need additional help beyond living costs will receive it in kind through disability support accounts. And the most vulnerable will continue to be supported through personal independence payments, reformed and enhanced as PIP health security allowances. We'll make other changes too. Reforming child DLA, new efforts to combat fraud and error, technical reforms to indexation and tapering, and the reinstatement of the two-child benefit cap. Together, with the steps above, these take our savings to £49 billion. Which brings me to the final change, and perhaps the biggest change of all. We've already set out plans to reverse Rachel Reeves' job-destroying tax funded by a levy on foreign workers, and to reinvigorate British business under Richard Tice by slashing red tape and energy costs, make this country competitive again. But we must also ensure that people who can work are incentivized to do so. There are more than 330,000 adults on universal credit capable of work and who are supposed to be out there looking for it, but who have reportedly been doing so for more than 12 months. This can't keep going on. We all know that. If taxpayers must contribute, so must those who are able to work also play their part. I'm therefore announcing that a reform government will introduce a welfare-to-work scheme that will require long-term benefits claimants who are fit to work to provide 20 hours a week of work for their community, organised by their local council. They'll work to clean up high streets and parks, to beautify neglected places, to carry out minor repairs, to staff libraries and community centres, to perform many other tasks from the list that we've published today. We'll also embrace local charities and community groups and ask them to help us and take part. If claimants refuse to participate or fail to show up, they'll face penalties. Let me speak very plainly. If people who are capable of work refuse, then they'll get nothing. That's fair. How can it be that one family on a street with working parents strive, work hard, only to fund the lifestyle of another who chooses not to bother to work at all, who isn't even really looking for a job? This isn't just an aberration, a small number of very isolated cases to be dismissed as a rounding error. It's an epidemic that's been allowed to take hold across our country and has now spread into a full-blown national crisis. My message today, for those taking everyone else for mugs, under a reform government, it's going to stop. Instead, if they're asking their neighbours to fund their lifestyle, whilst they choose to stay out of work, they can give something back in return. If they want to do something else, they can find a job. No more something for nothing. Under reform, it's security for contribution. They will become part of Alarm Clock Britain too. Across the OECD, schemes like this markedly improve claimants' chances of finding work. Job seekers, like everybody else, will start work on time, and they'll do something for a living. They'll be given an incentive to find a job and still have the time to find the permanent, long-term one that they want. The taxpayer, meanwhile, will get something back in return. At the moment, that's just simply written off. The taxpayer, the community, will get cleaner high streets, properly maintained parks, a helping hand down at the library. We'll get our town centres looking smart again. We'll help councils improve their services again. We're not the first party to propose such a scheme, but unlike the old parties, we really mean it. We will pass the primary legislation to enable these changes happen. We'll repeal the Human Rights Act. We'll leave the ECHR and its foreign court. And we won't allow politicians from the old parties to block it. Councils which fail to implement work placements properly, in full, will face cuts to their funding. And with this final element in place, the total savings from the package that we announced today will reach more than £50 billion. Without these changes, the cost of the welfare system will keep going up and up and up. We will face a genuine national debt crisis. And what happens in those situations? It's the least well off who are always forced to bear the highest price. Only reform will do what it takes to avert this. Welfarism exploded in the final years of the last Conservative government under Mel Stride. According to her own party chairman today, Kemi herself blocked welfare reforms, which would have cut the bill. Today, both Kemi Badenoch and Mel Stride offer paper-thin ideas. Literally so. Just their document they published was 3 pages long. They are content to simply tinker around the edges. Well, we're not. Reform is about real change. In 1942, Beveridge was very clear. The plan is not, he said, something for nothing without trouble, or something that will free the recipients forever from personal responsibility. It is this principle that Reform UK is restoring. The changes I've outlined will fix the social contract and prepare Britain for decades to come. Britain is broken. Reform will fix it. And today we do so with the biggest reform to our welfare system in my lifetime. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. And now Richard and I are going to answer questions from the media. We've got a long list. So our first question is from Catherine Forster from GB News. Hi, Catherine.
Thank you. The community service idea will no doubt be very popular with many people, but part of your savings is pretty much stopping all benefits for foreigners, including EU nationals with settled status. That is no doubt going to mean renegotiating the withdrawal agreement, given Robert Jenrick, that you were part of the Tory government that won a landslide promising to get Brexit done because people were sick to the back teeth of hearing about it. Do you really think that the British public are going to thank you for reopening that can of worms again? Thank you.
Well, firstly, you're right to say that asking people to work in their community in return for benefits whilst they're looking for a job is very popular. It's common sense. I think people across the whole country of all political persuasions and none will get behind that principle. And it will also be very good for the individuals as well. Instead of being sat at home, they'll be out there, gardening, working in libraries, learning valuable skills. But to your second point, I come back to the guiding principle that is behind everything that Rich and I have said today. It's fairness. The welfare state, throughout its entire history, has been about contribution. It was national insurance contributions. Beveridge spoke about contribution. That's the principle we want to restore. And it is not fair that British citizens are paying billions and billions of pounds every year to people who are not even Brits at all. 1/5 of universal credit claimants are not Britain. They're not British. That's crazy. Just imagine what we can do with that money. Now, there's clearly going to be a renegotiation. The deal that was done, I don't believe was a good deal. I think many people would support that. There are a number of points on which Reform has already made clear that we will need to return to our neighbours in the EU and renegotiate upon. And this will be one of them. Let's see. I'm confident that we can do that and we can restore fairness in the process. But
and it's not unreasonable also. I mean, that deal was now 7 years ago. And time of the next general election, it might be a decade after the original deal. And that's what you do with deals. You see which bits are working and which bits are not working. And this is one of those bits that's not working in the same way that actually net stupid zero. I mean, we signed up to that as part of the whole Brexit deal. It's a catastrophe. One of the greatest policy mistakes this century. So, yeah, there's a variety of things. I was just with some fishermen in Boston on Saturday, fuming at some of the parts of the deal. So there's a whole bunch of stuff where, with the passage of time, we need to say to our friends in Europe, actually, we need to redo this, frankly, for the betterment of all.
Very good. Right, I've got Joe Pike from the BBC. Joe.
Thank you, Mr. Jenrick. Joe Pike, BBC News. Under your modelling, how many people can expect to lose their benefits entirely? And you may have been saying there'll be no extra financial burden on businesses, but by involving them in sort of health issues around their employees, will that not amount to extra pressure, ultimately money, at a time when they have been slammed, including by the national insurance rise?
Well, you're right to say that businesses have been battered by Rachel Reeves, and I suspect that that will continue under John Healey and Andy Burnham. No party has been clearer than Reform about how we're going to support those businesses. Most notably, we said, in fact, we're the only party to say, that we're actually going to reverse Rachel Reeves' job-destroying increase in employers' national insurance for British workers. Nothing that we've outlined today will adversely affect businesses. We're saying that small businesses, businesses with 5 or fewer employees, will not be involved at all. Quite right. Larger businesses, they will take out a policy working with the government, but they will get a commensurate cut in employers' national insurance. So they will not be financially worse off. This is going to be a win-win. Businesses will have an incentive to look after their employees better and to help them back into the workplace, and they will, according to the Dutch experience, get those employees back faster to the workplace. 40% reduction is what the Dutch have experienced. So a big improvement. And for the employee, there's a big incentive now for their employers to look after them better, improve their terms and conditions, the safety in the workplace, the support. Instead of, excuse my language, bullshit schemes being put in place for people in the workplace, which don't really make a difference, employers will spend that money actually looking after their workforce properly. So I think it'll see a big improvement. In terms of people who are currently claiming, for example, PIP, well, what we're saying today is that PIP will continue, but it's going to be reformed. We're going to create a new version of it, and we're going to ask those people who have mild conditions, principally mental health conditions, to be reassessed. I think that's commonsensical, because we see the vast increase that we've had in recent times of those conditions. For other people, what we're proposing today will actually be better. We'll provide more security, because instead of being reassessed on a rolling 3-year basis, these are people with serious disabilities, we're going to give them the peace of mind that I think they deserve. And we're going to say that they're not going to be reassessed for the next 3 years, and then they'll be reassessed in the normal way thereafter. So for the people who really need the benefits the most, this is actually a significantly enhanced position with greater security.
And those reassessments should be face-to-face as opposed to online. And part of the tragedy of the current system is people are literally being written off, and they're not even being reassessed online, let alone face-to-face. And the tragedy of writing off people of any age, but in particular young people, has to stop. It's basic common sense as well as being fair.
But how many people is it going to affect? Is there a number?
Well, we're about to publish our document, so you'll be able to see all the numbers that are set out in here. And I would just say, this is the most comprehensive document that any party has put in place. It's 50 pages long. It's been produced by a brilliant team of people who've worked in the DUP, who helped to create policies in the past for the last couple of governments. I think you'll find it very, very impressive. And I would just politely say it is a world away from what the Conservative Party has produced, which, honestly, my kids produce more detailed plans for their school debating society than this. 3 pages. Pathetic. Sad. We've actually produced a very, very detailed and fully costed proposal. I've got Ben Block now from Sky News. Oh, I do apologise. Carl Dinham was actually next on this. I'll come to you afterwards. Ben. Sorry.
Thanks very much. Are you telling us that you don't have a number for the people who will lose benefits altogether, or just that it's in the document? Because obviously your savings depend on you having a number, don't they? Also, do you have any idea of how many people you expect to end up having to do work for their local councils in parks and the like under the universal credit bit of your plan? And on a different issue, following the news that the Prime Minister has been exchanging texts with someone pretending to be Susie Wiles, have either of you ever found yourselves talking to someone who's not who they pretended to be?
I don't know, Richard, you had that situation.
The answer to the latter is the easy one. No, but the Prime Minister's experience is probably an example of just make sure. It is actually genuinely an issue of scammers across all walks of life now. People have to be careful, and I suspect we all get texts. You think, who's this? What's this? Are we sure?
Very good. Look, what we're going to do with our welfare to work scheme is very simple. If you have been out of work for 12 months and you can work, so this is not for people who have disabilities who clearly could not work or it would be difficult for them to do so, but for those who demonstrably can work, they will now be asked to work alongside their job seeking. So the answer to your question is it will apply to absolutely everyone who's in that situation. And quite rightly so. Quite rightly so. Why wouldn't we use the talents of all of those people across our country to help make this country a better place? Yep. That's what we're looking to do. I've got Ben Block now from Sky News. Ben.
Thank you, Mr. Jenrick. Ben Block from Sky News. So you've said that both on these plans and a number of other points that you'll need to go back to the EU to negotiate. But what happens if EU officials don't come to the table, say no, decide to impose sanctions in tariffs, trade quotas, and whatever else? How would a reform government react to a negative reaction from the EU? And if I may, what is your message to Brits currently living in Europe who may lose their benefits there and may be forced to move back to the UK? Thank you very much.
You're getting ahead of the thing quite a lot. We're very confident that as part of a broader negotiation with the EU, that we'll be able to bring this to a satisfactory conclusion. As Richard has said, there's a whole host of things that we don't know when the next general election is, but say it's still 2.5 years' time. By then, will be some time past Brexit. A whole host of things will be on the table. We've set out some of them already, whether that's fishing or energy, new schemes that maybe Andy Burnham will have signed us up to by then, which will not be in the interests of the British people. We're very confident that we'll be able to negotiate.
And I think and the EU's got their own challenges. There's almost no growth anywhere in the main EU countries. And whether it's on migration challenges, whether it's on energy challenges, literally a shortage of electricity, whether it's on where are we with defending our borders across the whole of Europe. We don't know where those things will be, but we know that everybody faces challenges, and actually it's common sense in order essentially to look after one's own. And sure, we've made a provision for British nationals living in wonderful parts of Europe to ensure that they're protected as well.
Yeah, very good. Sophie Church from the Daily Mail. Sophie.
Thank you both. Do you think Nigel Farage or others within Reform are running out of patience with your Home Affairs spokesperson, CEO Yousaf?
Honestly, no is the answer. Zia's doing a brilliant job. He gave a fantastic press conference last week. And, I know it's August and people are a bit short of stories. But it's best not to make things up.
Very good. We've got Natasha Clark from LBC. Natasha.
Thank you, Mr. Jenrick, Mr. Tice. Just on... Sorry, I've lost my train of thought there. How long would it take you to renegotiate with the EU under your plans? And would you be prepared to accept something in return from the EU? For example, we're negotiating on the Erasmus scheme at the moment. Would that be something that you might want to bring to the table? And lastly, LBC has a very powerful story today about a 74-year-old British man who's facing deportation from Sweden. He's in a care home with dementia, and he's very seriously ill. Sweden say they're protecting their borders policy. Do you think this case is right and fair? And just following on from the other question, are you concerned about retaliation from other nations about our British citizens abroad? Thank you.
Look, sure. I mean, with regard to the first point about the EU, as I said, there'll be lots to discuss and negotiate. As business people, we like to get things done quickly, and let's see where there's at post a general election. There will be a whole wide range of things to discuss. With regard to the particular case you mentioned, I'm not familiar with the details, but it sounds, in a sense, dementia is a really, really tough, horrific illness. And of course, we want to do our bit. It's back to this issue of fairness. And if we apply fairness on both sides, I think actually we get to a much better place. But it's only by stopping the unfair bits to it, those who can work, who should be working, and by stopping paying overseas nationals who haven't contributed, that we can ensure we can protect and enhance and support more our own British citizens in need.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
John Walker from The Express.
Thank you. Can I just return you to the cost to businesses? Have you calculated exactly how much it will cost them to significantly extend sickness pay? And I realise you're saying it will be offset by cuts to national insurance. What will be the cut to national insurance? And are you including reversing Labour's cut as part of the money that will go to help business pay for this scheme?
Yeah, well, let me be very clear, as I hope I did in my remarks. We're not going to place any additional financial burden on businesses. That is the opposite of what reform stands for and what we have been doing in recent months. Everything that we have announced thus far has been about making it easier and cheaper for people to employ working people. That's what reform is. Reform is a party for working people. We've said that we think you need a commensurate cut to employers' national insurance of around 0.2%, and that's what we're working on the basis of. If it turns out that costs are higher than that, then we'll consider that, obviously, because our motive here is to ensure that a much, much better system is put in place, not to place additional burdens on business. I couldn't be clearer about that. Overall, British businesses are going to get a big cut in employers' national insurance from a reform government, because we're going to get rid of the employers' national insurance increase that Rachel Reeves put in place for British workers. So if you're a business watching this today and you employ British people, you're going to get a big tax cut under a reform government.
As well as also getting rid of unnecessary employment regulations imposed by this dreadful socialist government. And also, of course, actually, it's the smaller businesses, the family businesses, who actually have an incredible track record of looking after their employees, almost as extended members of the family. And in a sense, trusting them to help those employees who need some help and support, getting them back to work. They're the best to do it, as opposed to relying on various elements and arms of the state. So I think we can end up with a genuine win-win, which I think is what you saw in the Netherlands.
Yeah, absolutely. And to anyone who is unsure about this, just look at that example in the Netherlands. You can't dismiss the experience there, and in other countries as well that have pursued this. Those countries that have done this have seen a very, very big reduction in the number of people being out of work, claiming sickness benefit for a prolonged period of time. That's good for the businesses, obviously, because no business wants churn. They don't want to lose good staff. Good for the economy and the taxpayer. And above all, it's good for working people as well. So I think it's a very, very important reform. I've got Peter from The Telegraph.
Thanks. Sorry to go back to the same point, but I just wanted to pick up on what you said there about the Netherlands. So the OECD found that when they introduced a similar scheme in the Netherlands, that the cost of sickness and disability insurance for employers rose significantly. So I just wanted to get a commitment that if that same thing were to happen in the UK, you've mentioned a 0.2% cut that's comparable in national insurance. if that meant it had to be 0.4%, you're saying that whatever the cost is to businesses, it will be net neutral.
Yeah, I think I've been very clear on that.
It will go up.
And if you read the document, you'll see that as well. We've also said, learning from experiences elsewhere in the world, and I would just say those who've helped us to write this report have visited, have paid great attention to those experiences, spoken to businesses in other countries. We're going to ensure there are non-discriminatory proceedings in place so that there's not big differentials between insurance policies for heavy industry and those in perhaps more white-collar jobs where the risks might be less. So this has been very carefully thought through, and our commitment to business is very clear.
And interestingly, I mean, I was speaking to a relatively small insurer probably about 6 months ago about this issue and providing this sort of insurance, and they were astonished that actually the UK hadn't adopted this in a much greater scale. So I think it's actually, we need to be humble enough to say when other countries, frankly, are doing things better than we are, learn from it, adopt it, adapt it, and hey, we might even do even better than them.
Yeah. And if you talk to think tanks, people who've thought about these issues, this is one of those big ideas that commands very broad support across the political perspective. It's just no other party has had the guts, the imagination to actually get on and do it. That's the reform difference. I've got Constance from The Times. Hello, Constance.
Hiya. Most of your target seats are in areas where a high proportion of people on welfare. Fraser Nelson did some analysis yesterday showing that your top 20 target seats.
We don't just have 20 target seats.
Your top 20 target seats.
Sorry to break the news to The Times. We've got a lot more target seats than that.
I said top. Top 20 target seats are PIP hotspots. People listening this morning who might be feeling frightened hearing that kind of vital lifeline could be cut. What's your message to them? And do you think that might be a difficult message for you to sell at the next general election?
Well, let me be very clear, if I haven't been so already. We are going to protect the most vulnerable in society. Nothing that we talk about today is about pensioners. In fact, part of the motivation is to continue to provide the support that pensioners need. It's by doing tough things like this that we can continue to sustainably pay for the triple lock, for example, for pensioners. We're ensuring that children who are currently claiming, or their families are claiming on their behalf, disability benefit, will be protected. And we're saying that those people who really need this are always going to be protected under a reform government. We're not abolishing PIP. People are obviously familiar with that. But we are reforming it and ensuring that it works better. And in particular, looking at the minority of people who, for whatever reason, have been able to claim it, particularly for mental health conditions, which I think most people in the country now agree with us is not sensible, is not sustainable. Yep. That is the issue that we're really looking at. And I'd just say that, this is, or should not be controversial. Stephen Timms, the highly knowledgeable and respected Member of Parliament, who was the minister and who wrote a report for the government, he said that PIP was not sustainable, not fit for purpose. He said it was not fit for purpose. What did Keir Starmer and now Andy Burnham do in response to that? Commission another report. Delay, delay, delay. These issues are well known to most people in this country. Reform are actually taking them on. But you're right to say we need to do so in a very sensitive way and deliver a very clear message, which I hope we have today. They will always be guided by fairness and will always protect each and every person in this country who is on PIP today who needs that benefit. That is our absolute guarantee.
That's the key point. Existing claimants who need PIP will always get PIP. And by making the changes for overseas nationals, for future claimants, that's the comfort that existing claimants can essentially get that guarantee that the state will always still be able to afford to provide it. Otherwise, you just look at the graphs, it's unsustainable. Someone has to have the courage to say we need to make reforms carefully, sensitively, looking after existing protected claimants.
Very good. I've got Camilla Tominey now from the Daily Tea.
Morning. As you know, The Telegraph has reported on a lot of the issues around the surge in welfare payments for mental health and neurodiverse conditions. But people listening to this do want to hear specifics. Should you be able to claim A, benefits, B, a Motability car, or C, a blue badge for a non-physical disability? Where are you going to draw the line? Who will assess it and how will they assess it?
Well, firstly, Camilla, you will be able to claim those things for non-physical conditions because there's clearly some extremely serious cases of those issues. And what we're talking about here are the milder conditions where it is not sensible for those individuals to be parked on disability benefits when they could be helped back into the workplace. It's not for a politician to draw that line. This is for experts on a case-by-case basis. We have provided a great deal of detail in the report, but what we've said, and I think this is absolutely right, is that the current farce needs to end of people being able to claim disability benefits on an email or, which people can even generate AI forms. We're going to go back to face-to-face appointments with GPs and trained clinicians who will make these judgments on a case-by-case basis. We believe we can do that. Frankly, it's a disgrace that it didn't happen a long time ago. It's what's driven a lot of the current problems. It's going to be done very carefully to disaggregate those people who you rightly say do need support, despite the fact their conditions are not physical, from those who don't, and some who are taking the mick and need to be helped back into the workplace.
I think, and in a sense, Camilla, the key point is case by case, by experts. And your question infers that you can just draw a line here or there. Obviously, that actually isn't the reality, and that's not in itself fair. Case by case, sensitively, carefully, judged by experts.
Very good, thank you. I've got Ryan Saby from The Sun.
Thank you. On the return to work cover, what incentive is there for a company taking on someone in the first place with a health condition or a disability with the possible burdens later on? And when it comes to community service, why stop at 20 hours?
Well, that's a judgment. We want to give people time to do skills training that they may need, to prepare job applications, to go for interviews, and the experts that we've spoken to, including people who've run job centres, who worked at citizens advice bureaus, who've been former director generals of the DWP, helped to guide us to that figure. If in practice that turns out to be too few hours, then look, I'm up for it being more than that. Don't get me wrong, but it would be a good start, wouldn't it? It would be a good start.
It'd be a very nice problem to have. Yeah. And if that actually, when people are able to get back into work, and they see the benefits of it, contributing to their local community. And actually, hopefully, it's them who say, I want some more. How can I help more? That's a great thing. And I think we should promote it and celebrate it.
Yeah.
What was the first part of your question? Sorry.
Oh, well, as I said a moment ago, there will be non-discriminatory provisions in place where we work with the insurance companies, so there won't be large differentials in insurance premiums for different sectors or for different individuals, because it's very important, and you alight on an important point here, that we mustn't allow this to lead to employers making choices in who they employ where they don't take on the very people that everything we've talked about today is designed to help. So we've thought carefully about that point. And I believe it is properly reflected in the proposals that we've put in place. I've got George from the Press Association.
Thank you. We have had 5 heat waves this summer with more extreme weather expected in the form of flooding. Do you believe that climate change is real? And we know that Reform doesn't think net zero is the way to solve it. So what is? And if I may, on the welfare to work scheme, will this take jobs away from council employees?
Do you want me to answer the first?
Yeah, you go for that.
Yeah, look, of course climate change is real. And, but the idea, where is the evidence that net zero is going to stop it? Where is the evidence? There isn't any. Climate change has always happened, it always will. Maybe the smarter thing to do is to adapt to it than think arrogantly that you can stop it. And I think, I'm old enough to remember 1976. This feels a bit the same. That was 50 years ago. I think when it's a bit warm, let's enjoy it. And if it means that English wine and sparkling wine gets better and better, fantastic. That means we can take on the French, fantastic. Let's celebrate some of these things rather than just be sort of doom and gloom about it.
And build some reservoirs.
And build some reservoirs, yes.
I mean, we're an island nation. There's wet winters. Build some reservoirs, for goodness sake. And
yeah.
Reform set out a very good policy on that.
But also, where's been the discussion about desalination plants that are used in other parts of the world very, very successfully? there's not much water on land in the Middle East. They use desalination plants. We're surrounded by water. If it's too difficult to build a reservoir, let's look at desalination plants. It's a can-do, business-like, get-stuff-done attitude that this country needs in order to get us out of the mess we're currently in. Britain is broken, and only reform can fix it.
Very good, yeah. Quite right. We've got Isabel. We've got Isabel from Politico.
Hi there. Sorry, I know you've been asked quite a lot about what this will mean in terms of your relationship with the EU, but I just wanted to ask whether you had had any contact with EU officials about these plans, or if you plan to speak to them in coming days, and also just wanted to push you on what this does mean for...
That may have been them buzzing me just now.
I think it's one of Andy Burnham's alerts, isn't it? We haven't been to see the EU Commission, but, we all talk to our friends and partners across Europe all the time, and actually Nigel has more contacts across Europe than most people, so we're very aware of that. Was there another point, or was that...
And just, I wanted to push you on what this will mean. I know you said it was a long way in the future for Brits who are currently living in the EU, because there will be people worried about having to move back to the UK, and sort of what preparations or what thinking has gone into...
Well, on that point, let us be clear. We hope that we'll have a good, amicable renegotiation, and that we'll find a solution for both sides. It is a long way in the future, unless there's an early election. But let's see where we get to. We have made provision for some additional support, should it be necessary, for transitional arrangements. But, the truth is there's a big disparity at the moment today between the number of Brits who are living in the EU, particularly those who are claiming benefits, and the number of EU citizens who are living here in the United Kingdom, particularly who are claiming benefits. And look, the settled status scheme that was created by the last Conservative government has been very badly managed. It was in classic Home Office fashion, massive underestimate of the number of people who would claim. It remains open today. Lots of people continuing to come and claim. Home Office would themselves accept a lot of fraudulent claims coming through right now. This is a broken system. It's in need of urgent reform. I don't think that's a contentious point. And it's only reform, as usual, that's willing to actually get on and do those hard reforms. We've got Hugo from The Economist, and we are almost done then.
Thank you, Hugo Jai from The Economist. Mr. Jenrick, the government has today published a new update to the National Planning Policy Framework, which is intended to make it a lot easier to build new housing in rural areas near train stations. It's in many ways quite similar to the policy that you tried to put through as Housing Secretary, but were blocked by your fellow Conservative MPs. Do you support the new policy? Do you think it should be easier to build new housing in rural areas with good transport links, or do you worry that is going to essentially undermine your policy of not building on the Greenbelt?
Well, I hope you don't mind, but Richard is our housing spokesman, so I'll defer to Richard.
Having built more homes than the previous 24 housing ministers collectively over the last 24 years, you must come to our conference on the Thursday, the 3rd of September, when I'll be putting forward a serious package of planning reforms. But there's a contradiction here between what the Prime Minister is saying at the national level, ordering everybody to do, but he's sort of pro-devolution and letting people locally make the decisions. So which is it, Prime Minister, or are you just once again sitting on the fence getting splinters? What I would suggest, if you want some details about how to build a lot more on brownfields, come to our conference on the 3rd of September.
That's a good plug. I've got Noah Hoffman from The Spectator.
Thank you both. One of the more popular measures that the Tories introduced and Labour carried through was free childcare, which actually facilitates people going into work. So could you clarify under your position, if you've got one parent who is a British citizen and one who isn't, does the child have access to that free childcare?
Yes.
Okay, that's all.
Oh, that was easy. Very good. Only all questions were as short as that. Yes, absolutely. If you're in a household where, and it's important because there are many people in this situation. If you're in a household where there is one person who is a British citizen and then they have a spouse who is not a British citizen, but together they have children, then obviously the children benefit from all of the advantages that they would have by virtue of having a parent who is a British citizen. I've got Lucy White from Bloomberg.
Thank you both. You've spoken previously about wanting to remove settled status. Can you tell me what would happen to people who currently have settled status but foreign nationals who lose their job and would not be able to access benefits, regardless of whether they have partner or family here, and whether you plan to deport them? And secondly, you've spoken about your desire as well to have well-paid foreign nationals working in the UK. How do you expect them to come to the UK and work here and pay tax here if they're not getting the same level of benefit out of that?
Well, on your first point, sorry, what was the first point of the question? Homelessness. Sorry. Look, our position is very clear, and I think it's a fundamentally fair one. If you want to claim benefits, you need to be a British citizen. It's as simple as that. And I couldn't be clearer about that. So if you are in this country, you're not a Brit, you won't have access to the welfare state, barring the exceptions that I set out earlier, ones which are explicitly contributory, like a contributory pension. I think that's a very fair situation. If you come as a guest to another country, then there's a limit to the generosity and hospitality that that country offers you. You can always leave. You can always naturalise and become a British citizen, albeit that under reform, quite rightly, there will be a higher bar for that than there has been in the recent past.
I think the point about that is, most sensible nations, whether you've got a 5-year visa or a 10-year visa, nations want to know that actually you're doing your bit, you're playing your part, you're contributing, you're working. The idea that you can just rock up at a nation and not contribute and take a whole load of benefits, it comes back to the original point we mentioned. It's just not fair. And there's almost no other nation I can think of that acts in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And then lastly...
Sorry, just on the second point as well, about how you expect people to come here if they have to pay the same level of tax.
Oh, well, I thought your question was a bit, if I may say, it was a bit confused because you're saying these are high-skilled individuals who are well-paid individuals, but you're also saying they're going to claim benefits. Or which is it?
They can still lose their job.
Well, then they would have to leave, wouldn't they? I mean, that's reasonable. If I went to live in New York on a high-paid job, and then, God forbid, it didn't work out well, and I lost my job, I wouldn't expect the good people of New York to put me up in a council house and look after my 3 kids indefinitely. I'd be like, well, this was sad. It didn't work out. We're going back home to the UK.
Or
that's life.
Or look for another job.
Yeah, could always, God forbid, get another job. Will Hazel, lastly, from the Eye.
Thank you. Robert, you said you wouldn't want to see employers discriminating against people who perhaps had previous episodes of ill health or disability because they might perceive that they're a higher risk and they're going to be on the hook to pay for them for 2 years. But at the same time, Reform was saying you're going to repeal the Equality Act, you're going to leave the ECHR, you're going to abolish the Human Rights Act. Will people still have the legal rights to be able to claim and contest discrimination? And secondly, just returning to the whole negotiation with the EU, do you think the EU are going to cut a good deal with you if at the same time you're using the Royal Navy to dump illegal migrants on the shores of France?
Oh, we're not dumping illegal migrants on the shores of France. We are safely returning people who are in dinghies sinking in the middle of the Channel in a humanitarian effort. People who are otherwise at high risk. People are dying in the Channel every week. We're doing a win-win for both sides. So let's be very clear about what we're doing there. Yeah, I do think that we can negotiate with the EU, and I think we can negotiate with the EU a hell of a lot better than Keir Starmer or Andy Burnham will do. I trust Nigel Farage to cut a good deal with the EU because he's a strong leader who knows what he wants and is able to do that. So let's be very clear about that. Well, on your first point, I mean, I've made this point numerous times now, and the experience of other countries bears this out. You can put in place robust non-discrimination procedures that mean that those who are providing the insurance cover do not discriminate between sectors where there are higher levels of sickness or between individuals, so that there are flat rates which apply to all and give no incentive for a company to turn away the very people that everything that we're doing today sets out to achieve. And on the broader point about equalities, look, Reform believes in equality before the law. We want everyone to be treated equally in our country. And just because we see that Tony Blair's legislation, like the Equalities Act, has been a failure and created a whole series of unintended consequences, does not mean for 1 minute that we would do anything to reverse the good steps our country has made over the course of my lifetime on disability discrimination, race discrimination, equal pay for women, support for women on maternity to get back into the workplace and be protected. Those things will always be sacrosanct under a Reform government. At the end of the day, we're a workers' party. We believe in supporting working people. And this policy is one that's going to be very good for employers and very good for the employees, because they'll be treated a hell of a lot better by their employers, and they'll be able to get back into the workplace a lot faster than they do today. That's fair, and it's the right thing for everyone.
And just finally on that, everybody talks about the growth crisis or the lack of growth in the UK. I would just gently remind people, in the 20 years in the 80s and the 90s, on average, the UK grew at over 3% a year, real GDP growth, okay? In the last 20 years, it's about 0.5%. The cumulative effect of all of these well-intended bits of legislation has been catastrophic. And it's actually made people poorer, the very people who it was supposed to help. So maybe we need to have smarter regulations as opposed to a whole bunch of daft regulations that's made a lot of lawyers very rich with lawfare, but actually hasn't helped the people most in need across all of society. And the best way to help everybody is to get our growth levels back to those sort of levels we enjoyed in the 80s and 90s.
Well, I hope you've enjoyed the press conference today. Look, we've laid a gauntlet down now to Kemi Badenoch, who produced a few scraps of paper, and Andy Burnham that hasn't even done that. Reform has done the hard yards. We've produced a very serious document, and it's one that is based on fairness and contribution, and will tackle our welfare state and put it on a strong footing for the future. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.